Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It is May 19th, and this will be our chart lesson for the day. And really, we trended up for the majority of the day. We started trending up a little between 9:30 and 10, maybe 9:40 or so. So we trended up all the way into the close. So really, I mean, this is more kind of sideways, but it still has an upward bias, as you can see. But it's a little more sideways type action. But there's a slight upward bias here. What we did was we spiked up and then went over into this channel. And really, what prices were trying to do were to fill the gap on the chart. Notice this is where we closed yesterday, and this is where we opened at 8:30. So on regular on a regular daily chart where you don't have 24-hour trading mixed in, you would see a gap between where we these low points yesterday and where we opened today. So, and most of the time, prices will try to fill that gap, and today was no difference. They tried, they didn't quite get back there to fill the gap. Actually, maybe they did. Is the gap? Maybe I had the gap. I might have misread this earlier. I can't remember what I marked it at. 41. Yeah, we actually did fill the gap. That's amazing. I didn't think we quite filled it because I was looking at it. I think I actually quoted this as the low up here at 43, 41.33.75. So I looked at it wrong this morning. So if you wondered why I quoted that number, that's a mistake on the mid-morning chart. So really, here's the low right here. I need to. I don't know how I missed that, but there it is right there. So, and you can see we actually filled that gap before the close. And early this morning, you would have found it almost an impossible task to do that, but it's amazing how often this thing will turn around and fill that gap. So now that the gap's filled, we could go lower again, or this might be a reversal day. Who knows? But basically, this whole move up here was an attempt to fill that gap. And you can see prices got right to it, and now they're trading off again, or selling off again. Of course, this is into the next trading day, so we'll just have to see where prices go from here. But that's what this whole rally, late mid-morning rally that started was about. And this was really crazy trading, right? You got to be real careful in this stuff. If you found this little channel, you had an idea about where prices would start and trend at. Somehow move this a little bit. Let me get this right again. But you can see that we're turning down off the highs of that channel and turning up off the lows. And we really never got to confirm this trend line. We really got to close outside and then a move to a new high, and we kind of overshot it. But I think the reason we overshot it was that they were going to fill that gap one way or the other, and they certainly did. So very interesting day. But I'm going to back out here. You can see early on we had this tight, strong trend. I mean, this was a really strong trend. So we had a break, and it took a little while for this to reverse, and that's not uncommon for a trend that strong. And really what happened was we kind of leveled off here a little bit. It just kind of flattened out before we just reversed and took out of here. Um, maybe this is not a valid channel. I don't know. It's hard to say, but the price action's fitting in it, so it doesn't matter. Maybe this is just the key is we don't really get a break and a new low, although it could be that it was like this, and then now we get the close outside and move to a new low, and we went higher from there. So it's hard to say right there. We also had this yellow channel playing across here early on, and if you take a measured move of that when we broke lower, that's a perfect measured move almost. And from there we went straight back to the highs, then back down to the lows of the original range before breaking higher. So maybe this is just a range all along, and this has nothing to do with it. But if you put that green one on there, it certainly helps. Either way, you want to narrow down into these tighter trends, these micro trends. It definitely will help you. And there's one that I didn't draw here. There's a micro trend up there, and you can see we had a close outside, new high, then we moved up, came back, and We were clearly in this tight yellow channel until we couldn't get back to the highs. Then we had the break. We tried to move to a new high, but notice in the end it took a little. That's the key. Is sometimes your timing. Even though we expect prices to make a new higher, you don't know how they will get there doing it, but they still made the new high before they sold off again. Although we had a huge move down before they actually went higher and made the new high. So that's the key sometimes is the timing. Even though we know on a break of this yellow channel that we're probably going to get a retest of the high, we don't know exactly how prices are going to get there and do that. We know they're going to do that, but we don't know how. And normally you wouldn't expect them to sell off this hard before rallying that hard back up. It's just a strange day. And again, they're trying to fill that gap. And I read something else this morning I'll share with you. I read that over the last 4 months, more money is flowed into equities in the markets than they have in the past 12 years combined. So think about that. That's a lot of money to flow into the markets in 5 months. And that's probably why for the last 5 months, the market's gone straight up almost at times. However, if you look at this daily chart, we're just kind of going sideways here lately. But look at this trend prior. I mean, if you go back to January, which would be the last 5 months, look at this move up. And so some of this could just be of this sell-off or this sideways stuff. The market was probably way overbought. So you can clearly see we're going sideways. Let me back out again here. Or zoom back in, I should say. You can clearly see we were in this channel. We had a failed break out the high. Now we had a failed break out the low. And we've broken back out the low and almost closed back in the range. But you can clearly see when that move down, it was a measured move based. Here's the original width of the range, and that's just a measured move. We've got a little tool on our Pat's custom toolbar that you can click on and show the measured moves. And you see I just took them off there. Put them back on, show measured moves, and it automatically puts a line at the highs and the highs and the lows that are equal to the original. So it makes it real quick. I put the orange lines on there for people that don't realize what those lines are, but I just showed everybody, so now you know. But you can clearly see we've been working sideways, and it looks like we're going to make a higher low here and maybe trade back into the range. And from there, we could go higher. We may get a second entry long on the daily chart here and go higher. It's hard to say at this point, but we did enter down here into oversold territory. So it didn't surprise me that we rallied. And if we make a higher low and rally, we got plenty of room back to the upper side now. So we've relieved some of that overbought pressure. And this could just be profit taking. If that much money's flowed into the market over the last 5 months, somebody's made some money. So there's probably some profit taking going on at these highs now that we're going sideways. So we'll just have to see what's happening. I'm going to get back to the other chart because we're spending, we're 8 minutes here and hadn't even started. So we're back to the intraday chart, 2000 tick chart. Let's back out and we will go through the trades here. And you can see that 7 o'clock came right in here. So we're working up and this is a strong downtrend. You get a first entry and then you get a second entry here. Normally I'd like to see this get back to the trend line, but you can clearly see this channel working up, and we had a close outside the new high plus an overshoot, and that's a fairly bearish bar. And again, if you look at this, that's a very strong downtrend. So the fact that we had the break, the new high, and the overshoot, I think this was worth risking. You might let it break lower and drop a limit order just to get a little better entry, but it didn't matter. It took off. This one's close. You could almost argue for it to be green because you got to be concerned that it's not back to the trend line. But if you recognize how strong that trend is and you get a second entry short, it's hard to ignore it. It really is. And that's not a perfect signal bar, but I believe it closes in its lower third, so I think it qualifies. Unfortunately, it didn't break higher here. You could have treated that like a lower high. That's not really. There's a little bit more stem on this one too, and a smaller body, so it's really almost a neutral bar. there's your failed second entry long here, but it doesn't set up very well. It is off the key entry point, but we're right down here at the lows, and we're not back to the EMA. I just don't think it's worth trading that. And then, of course, we come back, and you get a first entry, and then you come up here and you get a second entry short. There's actually a trap here, and you could have traded this too, because that is the first break of this, but we had a little overshoot there, and this is the midline, the EMA, and we turned down off that right here too. So if you traded this, I should have marked this green at the very least. I don't know if I would have waited to this bar to go short, because if you did, it probably didn't work either. But when it broke higher and turned down on that engulfing bar, you might have gone short right there. That is a second entry short, really. So that's one you'd probably consider as well too. We did break higher, and you do see the two legs back here, so you could count that as a second entry, but the signal bar is not good enough. But you get a lower high here that gives you a big bearish bar, and so if you wanted to go short right there, that's the place to go. Again, we didn't get back to the trend line, but the fact that we hadn't got back there twice, this thing's very weak. So that's if you didn't trade this one, definitely trade this one. So with that being a lower high, and so that's really a triple test there as well. If you draw a resistance line right across there, you can see we made that high. We tested once, we tested twice. So there's several different reasons. This is starting to look like a little range here. And early on, I had this range high right here, but as the range expanded over time, I moved that line up. So I like going short there. You don't want to go short right into the lows, even though that looks like it probably would have worked. You can't take that trade. There is a failed second entry short here, and that's tempting, but that's just mostly sideways. And at this point, I was looking at the highs right here. If you took that one, I wouldn't have a whole lot of trouble with it, because it does confirm that trend line, but it's definitely green. It's just a little bit early to be looking for a long right there, because this has been a really strong trend and there's no break of it. Although we were overdue for a break, I'd skip that trade. It's really I don't even like making that green, I'll be honest with you. It's just too early to look for a reversal. I would still be looking for shorts here. We run up here, and this is our first close outside, so we're looking for a new low here. And prices run straight on down and make that new low. They try to go higher once, twice, but with this support here, there is a little double test, but that's just too much sideways. It ends up dropping on down and would have worked, but you can't risk that. I mean, if you draw your lines, you can easily see that's a trap. You're just asking to get trapped entering in something like works this time, but next time, you'll get trapped. And really, you only have one leg down there after the break, and a lot of times you'll get two. So when this thing rockets back up and it finds resistance up here at these highs, and then you get this little trap at break, you get your close outside, move to a new high, then you get a double top that breaks higher and turns down. I like going short right there. Boom. It's a little congestive there, but if you see that prices are way away from the EMA and you know there's resistance up here, then it makes sense to try to ride this back. You get a failed second entry long here, and normally I'd say this is a little close to the EMA, but again, it breaks higher first and fails and runs down, so it's an engulfing bar. I like just having my sell stop there and letting that sweep me in. Most likely we're going back to test these lows, and we may make another leg down like this one. You can see we didn't quite make the next leg down until way over here. And again, there's that timing thing. You expect that we'll probably make another leg down, but we don't make it down till way over here. If you measure that leg, bring this over, you can see we ended up going a little lower than that, but the better way to measure this was to measure the range break, and then that gets you much closer there. So, but we still got the leg down. But anyway, I like that trade. And then we work our way back to the top, and you get a lower high here, but again, signal bar is no good. We run down. The only reason I like this one is the double test and the failed second entry long. Notice that support or resistance line across there. And really you tested it once, twice, but this made a little higher high, so I'm not crazy about counting this as the second one. It is a lower high, but that looks a little congestive. So I would wait, and then you got another lower high here, and now you got a triple test for sure because you got that high. You test it once, you test it twice, and this actually broke higher and then turned down. So with those little three matching bars, if it breaks lower, you're going to get a scalp out of that at a minimum. And it's, you know, you would want, I know I'm going to get this question, what about that resistance or that support right there? Yeah, there's support there, and it's something to consider, but with this breaking out, breaking higher and going down and going out all in one bar, you should get a scalp out of that for sure. This has been a strong downtrend. You know, if this was a range day, even though this has been a little range like, you can see your measured leg. You got to, you know, if you measure the range, it's on down here. This range, we haven't quite made, or this measured move, we hadn't quite met it either yet, so there's a little bit of room in there on that one as well. I actually like playing this one by letting it break higher, then turn down, and not even putting your sell stop right there, but letting it break lower and then dropping your sell stop with a limit order a tick or so back, and you would have got filled on it, and that gives you a little more room too. So there's a couple of different ways to do that one. And then we make two legs down, and we come back and we get another lower high, and again it breaks higher and turns down. And again on you know, on most days you probably wouldn't trade this down like this, keep taking these shorts, but this has been a strong downtrend. So, you know, as long as it keeps giving you setups, take them. It's a second entry short. Notice the new low, first entry, then it breaks higher and it traps people instantly trying to pick those bottoms. Guaranteed you're going to run down here and at least test the low again if you don't make a new low. And sure enough, you make a new low. Now there's a second entry long there, but it's just too early to be looking for a long. And when we get this channel working up, you try to go higher once, try to go higher twice. This is a tempting one to want to go long, but like I just said, I think it's too early to be looking for a long. Just sit tight and wait, and sure enough, you get this big bearish bar. So now if it breaks lower, it's going to be a failed second entry long, and we may run another leg down. We don't quite get another leg, but we get an easy scalp, and we're entering with the bias and where it keeps selling off. It does reverse and go higher, and it gets back in the range. And you can't enter in this. There's no way to go long there, really. Not a good setup to go long, and you don't want to go back short right into that support. There's no setup there anyway, so you really have to just kind of skip that one. And here, this is, I mean, technically you could say you got a new low, but it doesn't break lower there. It doesn't break lower there. So this is really the first break lower, even though that looks like a reversal pattern. So I don't think you want to risk that. It was tempting. I looked at it. You would expect prices to try to make a new high on this little channel, but it could just end up as congestion and stop you out and then go up. So I didn't mark any of that. I didn't mark any of this either. Just too congestive, not very good signal bars. You can tell the range is back in play. Didn't get a chance to go long. And then we finally break out, and look where the measured move is on the upside. It's this blue line. It's the same width as this, and we go to that to the tick. And there's actually a failed second entry long right here, but that looks too congestive, so this only looks like one leg down to me, but it could be two legs down. So I just don't like taking that back to the short side. I just think it's a little risky. You don't have a lot of room to those lows. You do this secondary low over here, and it would have worked, but I just think you're better off to skip it. And of course, what you're expecting prices to do is pull back and test this breakout area again. One test is probably not enough to convince everybody to go long, other than the weak traders that don't know any better. So no surprise that it comes back here again. But again, I just don't think you want to go short right there. it kind of gaps over anyway, so you would have had to use a limit order and let it come back, and just not crazy about that right there. It's just not a good enough setup for me. But we come down and we make that low. We test this high once, we test it twice, and that's a failed second entry short. I like going long there. It may not have been quite enough to convince the smartest traders, but when it comes back again, and gives you that bullish bar, and pretty much definitely confirmed that trend line then. Now you can see it takes off, and then we're off to the races up again. We go up to the midline, first entry. There's a second entry long right here, but I don't think you want to go long right into the high right there, but when it pushes through, pulls back, and gives you that high or low that breaks lower first and traps people and goes out the other side and confirms that little short-term trend line, I like going long there. It's a little bit aggressive because you got to go long at the highs on a breakout, and that's not always a good idea. But this channel looks valid, and once we got it confirmed here, I really liked it then more to the upside. But this one's a little aggressive, so of course we run on up, and then we kind of work back to the EMA again, and you got another second entry. Notice that little micro channel, you get a break, new low, and then a second entry long with a nice signal bar. Comes back, gives you another second entry, but the signal bar is no good. But then watch, you get a first entry short, second entry short. It confirms that trend line, a bullish bar. Again, you're having to go long right into the highs, so I marked it green, but no surprise that it took off. At this time, you got to assume we're going up to try to fill that gap. And at this point, I'm still playing this yellow channel. I'm not even looking at this blue one. So you're playing this yellow channel, expecting prices to go to the upper side here. So we come up short a couple of times here and then come back and get a break. So that's a little telling that, hey, we might not be going, we're not going there yet. Notice first entry, second entry. I marked this one. We came back. We didn't quite get back to that support. If that would have been right off that support, I might have made that second entry blue. But here I think you're better off to wait on the higher low, and you still got plenty of room back to the EMA. That's the safer entry there. And then you get a reversal, which I figured at this point you're thinking prices are going to go make the new high after the break outside. This is again what I'm telling you, timing sometimes will be off. And even though it's an easy scalp, which it would be most likely because it's a trap, we don't go make a new high. We sell off, and it's a little later before we run up and make that new high right here before selling off again. So anyway, we're working down here. There's a second entry short right there, but that's a little congestive, and you would expect that we might get another leg that's more readily evident here back, which we do. And so that looks like two legs back, and then you get that. Notice how we made that high. We made a double top, and then that's just a lower high. It breaks higher, turns down. You can go short one tick below this bar or wait to this close and go short there. I like it either way. And then actually we've got a little, you can just treat that as a new high because it's right there where all that other resistance is. So first entry, second entry, and that's basically another trap and another chance to get short there. And you're still looking for prices to best this low right here, which they do, and then it reverses. Unfortunately, you don't really get a chance to go long here. The reversal's way too far gone. You could expect this is going to go higher, but I'm not going to trade it, and I'm not going to mark it either. It's just too risky. And you come back, you pull back, you get your break of this micro channel, and you turn down right up here at this blue channel. If you back this out, it hadn't been confirmed yet, but the fact that it's turning down there every time, if you hadn't found it off the lows, draw a line off these highs and drag it down, and hopefully that'll help you find that. So it turns down right at it. There's a lower high right here and a failure right here, but we haven't made a new high. So I don't like trading them, even though they would have both worked. I want to see that new high first, which we get here. and then you just don't get a setup. And you would hope to get a reversal pattern here, but you don't. It's just sideways, no setup there. And then you're too far away down here. There is one more. There's a little congestion here, and you could treat that like a failed breakout, but again, I'd want a lower high, and you don't get it. It just drops down. And that takes you into 2 o'clock. So it was really from 1 o'clock on, this was hard trading right here. I mean, just about the time you think we're settling back into another move down, then we're moving up. And when you think we're about to settle into an upward move, then we're moving down again. And if you didn't find this blue channel, this was really hard to know what was going on here. Other than the fact that if you found the yellow channel, you did understand that we'd probably try to make a retest, because that's a pretty strong. I mean, that started at 9:40 or so, and we didn't get a break until 12:40. That's 3 hours. We're probably going to retest that high. We didn't get an overshoot, and we didn't make a new high here, so it's no surprise. Plus, you got to remember the gap, that prices are probably still trying to fill that gap, and we hadn't quite done it at this level here yet. So we needed to move on up into here, actually about where we got to there. So it was an interesting day. This is it's basically a gap day. That's the way I would describe this. And I mean, you could almost call this, we're still trading. Most of the day we traded inside the overnight highs and lows, other than this little temporary drop lower. So, you might have looked at this. I mean, this is sideways type trading. Look at the EMA. We're above it, below it, above it, below it. So even though there's a slight uptrend there, you can trade this both ways if you get a good setup. So there's no problem with that. Here, you only want to be trading up. Here, you only want to be trading down. This, you might trade both ways, but this has still got an overhang by. I mean, if you move this all the way to the left, I mean, if you see that, we're still looking at a downtrend. And I originally had that slanted downtrend, which was likely correct, and some of these trades were off of that. So maybe I shouldn't have removed that, but just want you to see that at this point, I mean, this still looks very bearish right here. Very bearish. So it doesn't really change until we break out up here and are heading higher. Really, when we confirm this trend line right here, that's when you have to say, hey, something's changed here for sure. So anyway, almost 30 minutes worth here. I'm not going to drag this out anymore. Lots of trades here today. Very tricky price action, especially for somebody that's a new chart reader. It's not real experience. So if you struggle on a day like this, especially once you get outside this yellow channel into this stuff, don't worry about it. I mean, you see there's not many trades out here. And so if you're struggling, that's why, because there's not a lot of setups, and this is hard to trade. It really is hard to trade. This is fairly simple right here up until about here. And then this gets fairly simple up through here. I should say gets easier, not necessarily simple, because we're not coming back to the main trend line a lot. Everything's kind of bouncing in the middle there. But once you start to see it bouncing a lot in the middle, you can kind of start to trade that if you get a good setup. So, but it quickly reverses and gives you the break. And then that confuses because we don't make the new high. And so typically this move here would probably go on and make a new high, but I guess we still have that hangover from the big sell-off early, and people are thinking maybe we're going to get another leg down. I don't know. It's just hard to say, but you notice that in the end, the price action is right. It wins out. We still get a retest of the high before it sells off. So keep that in mind. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.